The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. We do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. In past episodes, I have interviewed CEOs and CCOs, which stands for Chief Creative Officers. And hey, there's nothing like learning and networking with the top bosses. But this show is built to help you break into advertising, and sometimes you can better resonate with people who recently did just that and learn from their successes and failures. This week, you will learn from Victoria Clouse. Victoria is 2 years into her advertising career at Fallon as an account manager. Fallon is an award-winning boutique creative advertising shop based in Minneapolis. Fallon is historic in the industry. Founded in 1981 as Fallon McElligott Rice by Patrick Fallon, Tom McElligott, Nancy Rice, Fred Senn, and Irv Fish. They're known for many historic campaigns, but some of those that you might heard of or you should look up include Rolling Stone's Perception Reality, which increased Rolling Stone's ad pages by 81% in just 4 years. Jim Beam's Back to the Basic, Lee Jeans, Buddy Lee, BMW with the BMW films, and of course, the Cadbury Dairy Milk Gorilla. Please go on Wikipedia, go look these up. They're fantastic. But back to Victoria. Victoria's story will resonate with you directly as she talks about how she broke into Fallon, which meant taking another internship offer and waiting for her dream job at Fallon to open up. Her story is one of patience and confidence. You will learn how she built and maintained a healthy relationship with a mentor on the inside at Fallon, and even how she can negotiate her first job offer. And she'll open up about her starting salary. So Victoria mentions how you can connect with her at the end of the podcast, but we also have her LinkedIn linked in the description. And also, she lists out secret resources specifically designed for you to break into advertising. And every guest does this, by the way. Hint, hint. You can find those exclusively on our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. Swipe on the carousel post to see the bulleted list. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Victoria Clouse, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I heard you have nice weather in Minneapolis. Is that correct?
Yes, we're very lucky. It's so hit or miss here. So it's one of the rare days in spring that we actually have 74 and sunny. So
nice.
After this, I'm going to go on a walk. This is my last meeting of the day.
Perfect.
We're going to go get outside.
Well, I hope this meeting is stress-free and fun, and you can look forward to this. So absolutely. I've been looking forward to it as well. So I'm excited to talk with you about advertising, being an account manager at Fallon. Fallon is a wonderful boutique shop. I believe it is part of the Publicis network. Recently bought, actually not so recent, right? Maybe within like 20 years ago. So, but just one of those Hall of Fame shops. I think everybody should know Fallon. And I think you're my first guest from Fallon. So you have to represent Fallon well.
Yeah, no kidding. A lot of pressure on my shoulders.
No pressure at all. Just be yourself. And that's why you're here. I believe Mark Jensen connected us. He had a great episode. One of the most interacted with posts we've had. Professor at University of Minnesota. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. He's a rock star. Everyone that I know that comes out of the University of Minnesota, out of the advertising or the strategic communication program, knows Mark. He's just a rock star.
A lot. And I actually start a segment where I interview those professors at every school or lecturers. There's usually one or two. If you're lucky, you get like multiple, but there's always a rock star. Like there's one like gatekeeper of the jobs almost.
They've been there and now they're a professor. Yeah. Honestly, the most ideal situation in my opinion.
So let's break it down. I think we can get into your break-in story, but first I want to know a little bit about you. I know pretty much here that you're an account manager at Fallon. I want to know right now who you are and what it's like working at Fallon and what it's like to be an account manager. So high level stuff here. I'll let you go wherever you want with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm an account manager at Fallon. I will be at have been at Fallon 2 years this August. So I'm just about at 2 years, which is great. Fallon has been my dream Minneapolis agency ever since I discovered what advertising was, the go-to in Minneapolis. I did start with advertising. I'm from a small town in southern Minnesota, right outside of Northfield, Minnesota. Some people are familiar with it for St. Olaf and Carleton colleges. But
how far is that from where Fallon is in Minneapolis?
I'd say my hometown's about an hour south. So we're surrounded by cornfields, super small. The town, I think,
good enough. Like
173 people. Tiny.
Does your family still live there?
Yeah, my family does still live there. They do.
It's like a good distance away where you kind of know if they're popping in, but there's no surprises.
They'll send me a text. They're up in the cities every so often, and it's nice. So I see
and
them.
You can make your way back too.
Exactly. Yep, I get down there on a regular basis, which is really nice.
And you've been at Fallon for 2 years, so that's a good amount of time. I mean, you haven't really switched around too much then. It seems. You've been there since you graduated?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I want to really just get my bearings in one place, kind of understand the industry before I get moving to somewhere else.
Sure.
So I don't think I'll be at Fallon forever, but Fallon was my first stop, my first big achievement for myself right outside of college. I think it's a great starting place.
Well, it's listen, it's more than that. It's a great agency. Like I said, it's a Hall of Fame agency in general. It's award winning. It's a lot of people's reach. So like you did really well with this break-in. So I'm excited for your break-in story, but I'm curious, like, because I'm familiar with the old school work that you guys have done, but tell me about what Fallon is like. How many people roughly, or do you go into the office? What clients? Give me the high level about Fallon.
Yeah, absolutely.
What makes you guys different?
Yes, Fallon's awesome. Fallon is a super creative focused agency. We're just so focused on the creative work. We really value it. We try really hard to support our creatives and push for anything that our creatives want to. So I find that creatives are very supported here at Fallon, which I love. I am not like creative focused by nature. I'm an account manager, but I really love how much Fallon values creativity. It's just award winning and I love it. But Fallon is about 150 people, if I remember correctly. We're smaller than we used to be. I know we used to be bigger when we had car accounts back in the day, but we're a little bit smaller now. We're broken up between two offices, like brick and mortar, I guess you'd call them offices.
Where are they at? Minneapolis?
We have one here in Minneapolis. This is the bigger agency. This is where we're settled. And then we also have one in New York. So we work with a lot of teams in New York. And then we have a lot of people who are remote. I want to say we have like 20 people who are remote around the country. Chicago, Austin, just all over. So about 150 people. Some of our top clients include Arby's. I think that's what we're known best for. Yep. We have Jack Links. We have KeyBank. We have Entenmann's, an account I work on. We have Showtime. We have Front Door Shoulder. Super Tires. Yes, we have Monkey Shoulder.
What's Monkey Shoulder?
So Monkey Shoulder is a small whiskey brand. I think that they're. I don't work on the account. I think they're based in the UK. I think that's where they're from, and we work on the UK account.
Sure, I know that I'm very familiar with your Arby's work. I see you had some ESPN stuff done recently as well.
Yeah, and I work on the ESPN account, but we only do NHL for them. So we don't work on any other sports. We just specifically do their hockey.
Kind of makes sense being in Minneapolis, like
I
hockey.
think, and that's a big reason because we have a lot of hockey lovers at Fallon, and that's a big reason they chose us because we just have the passion for hockey, and what better place than Minneapolis,
Favorite work that you've seen in your 2 years there, or made you laugh? Maybe not directly that you've worked on, but that the agency has produced. Is there anything that you're super proud of that you can point to?
Coming out of Fallon, I'm trying to think.
Fallon, yeah. I see a Sasquatch. I don't remember the Sasquatch ads for Jack Links.
Yeah, we recently had some really bizarre work come out of Jack Links where he's like peeing in a urinal. That one was pretty funny. I did not expect that coming out of Jack Links. Arby's has just been wonderful. They've had a lot of good stuff. I'm trying to think. I can't remember off the top of my. This is so bad. I should know exactly what my agency is producing, but it's just so on the spot. I can't. Maybe we'll come back to that one. And I'll see.
And I'm looking now. I think I'm definitely familiar with as I'm scanning the site
You're
here.
just so involved in your own account, you almost forget what other people are predicting. That's a
That's
terrible.
very fair. That's very fair. So what account, remind me, what account do you work on?
I work on Entenmann's, and Entenmann's is comprised of both the Entenmann Sweet Baked Goods brand and Little Bites Muffins, which I feel like everyone knows Little Bites Muffins as a brand, but they
Oh
may
my
not know it's
goodness.
owned by Entenmann's. So I work on Entenmann's, so it's both Entenmann's and Little Bites. And then I also work on the NHL for ESPN.
Well, let's talk about the food.
Yes, Entenmann's. It's a Brooklyn-based bakery. We won it in 2021. It's a wonderful account. I actually grew up eating Entenmann's, and so this is the account I got hired for here at Fallon. They needed an account manager on the new Entenmann's account, and so they hired me, and it was perfect because my dad bought us the rich frosted donuts all the time when we were kids. So I was super familiar with them. We've done some great work for Little Bites. Right when I got hired in 2021, we produced a new campaign for Little Bites called Proud Sponsor of Little Moments That Feel Really Big. And it's basically highlighting kids that are just highlighting kids in a way in their quirky, authentic selves. We're not looking for the straight A students or the kids that win spelling bees. We're just looking for quirky kids as their authentic selves. And we produced a series of videos that included us just interviewing kids talking about small moments to them that felt so big. So one of our key ones that's out there is Lincoln, and he talks about how one time he found 5 worms, and he had never found 5 worms in his life before, but that day he found 5 worms, and it was just the most exciting thing to him. We talked to this girl Remy, this little girl Remy, and she talked about how she rode a really fast elevator one time and it went up and down over and over again, and it just blew her mind. And so it was the most charming thing ever just to have these kids talk about little moments that were so special to them. And that's what Little Bites really wants to highlight. I mean, it's kind of perfect. Little Bites, little moments that feel big. It works out really
Hmm.
well. But that's what we've done for Little Bites. And we have a fun thing coming out this summer called Camp Little Bites. So you can look for that after Memorial Day, which is really exciting. And we're going to have kids be camp counselors and talk about little moments this summer um, little moments this summer that they can, what's the word for it? That they can highlight, I suppose, because, I feel like a lot of CPG brands focus on school and backpack and lunchbox, but for Little Bites, we want to focus on summer when kids need activities and little things to do. So
I hear you. And I love it. I see the strategy. I could see how there's so many different extensions that play off this that are grounded with the mission of the brand. So very, very, very cool. And to me, it's just kind of nostalgic. Like I face a lot of stress. You face a lot of stress, and
mhm.
then being reminded that we were all kids, and like seeing that their biggest accomplishment was finding 4 worms. It's just wholesome, brings you
Exactly.
back, and it's like a
Yeah,
good
not
reminder to kind
holding
of cherish the
kids,
little things as well.
yeah, not holding kids to being so perfect and letting them
Mhm.
be themselves.
But it's also like a reminder to me, I feel like, as we're talking about this,
Yeah,
like even if I saw this ad, like I'd be like, oh yeah, I was a kid once, and there's still that somewhere, maybe like forgive yourself a little bit here, enjoy the little moments as
absolutely.
well. So I like that. I could see how it could have some like residual marketing like towards me, even though I might not be the
Right.
direct audience, but I hear it. So I think that
Great to
that's
hear.
every good campaign can kind of target and hit ricochet, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. So you've been there for 2 years, so that's a testament that you enjoy it. And being from Minneapolis, or from our south of Minneapolis, and going to University of Minnesota, I mean, how has that been? I mean, I'm a very similar route where I'm from Chicago, went to school, University of Illinois, and went back to Chicago. How is that? Like, was that always the goal for you?
Yeah, the goal for me was to definitely go to a big college. It wasn't the University of Minnesota at first because, like I said, come from a small town. So the education is a little bit different. You don't have such a vast breadth of education in high school as maybe other schools did, because I went to such a small high school. So I didn't really know what was out there. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college. So for me, I knew I wanted to do something creative. I knew I wanted to do something interesting. So the first thing that came to mind for me was movies. I wanted to get into film. So started looking at film schools. I wanted to go to big schools. I was totally comfortable with going out of state. But I did apply to the University of Minnesota because it was definitely like one of the bigger ones and it was in the city. So I was like, okay, this will be my backup. Like I have the University of Minnesota and I'll apply to all these film schools and all these film programs.
Film schools, film
Yeah.
programs. What are some film schools? I've never.
Oh my gosh. I guess NYU, they focus on film.
Okay.
LMU over in California, a lot of California schools.
And remind, what did you want to do with film again?
I wasn't sure at the time, but I believe I wanted to go into production and directing, just being a part of it and like having a say in how it's creative and being on the creative side of it, managing it all basically.
Okay,
I
producer, director.
Yeah, I was also looking into editing as well because I really enjoyed that. I played around with iMovie a lot when I was a kid. I was super interested in it. It was like my hobby. So I was like, oh, the next thing that would make sense would be to go into film. I had never considered advertising or marketing. It was not talked about in high school. Like we didn't offer any marketing classes. We didn't offer any advertising classes. So I don't know why my first thought was film, but I was like, oh yeah, I'll go do that.
Kind of makes sense. I mean,
so I applied to all these colleges, just end up going to the University of Minnesota, good price, close to home. I get into the film program and I realized it's just not for me. It's a bit out of reach. I realized it was more of a hobby than it was something I wanted to do with my life. I liked creating like little films and videos on the side. But when there was that pressure of having to create something during class or create something right on a tight timeline, it wasn't for me. So I was like, okay, and going to move, there's such a stereotype or such a cliche with film where you have to go to LA and you start small and you work your way up. You're like serving coffee at these film sets and then that's how you get there. And that just did not sound great to me. I was like, that is not really what I want to do. So I went to my advisor and I was like, what's close to this? What else can I do? And we started looking at other majors and other classes. And I ended up liking all of the classes that were in the strategic communications major in journalism. Super random. Didn't know what it was. But I was like, wow, these classes sound interesting. From, media, there was a graphic design class, all that kind of thing. So I ended up changing my major to that just because the classes sounded interesting and it sounded like something I could do. So it kind of close to film, but also a little bit different. So ended up getting into strategic communication, taking all the classes, learning more.
When did you transfer into strategic comms?
I want to say at the end of my sophomore year. So I was a film major for the first year. Beginning of my sophomore year, I was kind of like, whoa, not for me. I need to find something different. So then I spent the majority of my sophomore year looking into other majors, trying different classes, signing up for them. And then at the end of my sophomore year, I was like, okay, I'm going to make the tradition into StratCom. And then started taking my classes, got in because you have to apply for the School of Journalism at the University of Minnesota. So I ended up getting in, ended up taking classes, started learning more about advertising because advertising there's so much going on. It's not just advertising. It's like all these facets of advertising I started to learn. I'm like, oh, there's account management. Oh, there's media buying. Oh, there's a creative person. Like you don't have to be a creative person, but you can be involved in the creative process. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was talking about film, something that really stressed me out was being creative on a tight timeline. But I still wanted to be creative and be a part of the creative process. And so that's when I started honing into my strengths and realizing I may not be someone who can produce creative, but I can be involved in it and I can start managing it. And that's how I found account management was we had all these people coming in and speaking about it. And I knew that my strengths were managing people and my strengths were being organized, not exactly being creative on that tight timeline.
Right.
And
but
then,
it's good that you have that creativity grounded in you and, it's there. Every good account manager needs to recognize creativity and what makes an ad good and understanding what the client wants and balancing it with the client team, with the creative team. So you're the liaison between the two.
Oh,
so
absolutely. An account person, they may be the suit, they may be the business side of things, but they still need to be a creative person. It's still super important to, account people should never hark on themselves for not being creative because they really are.
I mean, in my agency, one of the most creative people here is one of the lead managing
Right.
directors, and just thinks outside the box and knows how to really push it to the clients. Understanding truly what the client wants is so important, and
Yeah.
then being able to talk with them about a great creative idea, and really being brave. I mean, you guys have some, I'm sure you have great clients. Not every agency has brave clients, and not everybody wants to spend their marketing dollars on these crazy brand activations or crazy television little bites commercials. Potentially that could be scary for some people. So as account, you really kind of need to step up, and you need to have confidence when you get to that level, when you are communicating with the client and saying, you need to take this step. This will grow your brand. This will help you out. And they might not see that.
That's such a key thing you're bringing up too. And that's something that I've been talked to a lot about from my managers and my leadership of how to move from an account manager to an account supervisor, is really being able to sell it to clients and talk them through it and lead clients. There's something that we say at Fallon, that it's not account management, it's account leadership. And it truly is. Like, you are a leader. You're leading your teams, you're leading clients, because your clients will always be the most sophisticated people. And you really have to come to them with that marketing background, and I'd say convince, educate. Sometimes you have to educate your clients before you can even convince them. And you have to really hold that role. And it's really important for your creatives and for your agency to have those skills and to be able to do that with your clients. And so that's a huge thing that I'm working on right now, is learning to not only lead my teams, but lead my clients, because that's what takes you to a higher level of account management.
Exactly. Very, very well put. And thank you for providing that insight. So back to your story though. So you transfer in to strategic comms. You see that you don't want to be told to be creative on the spot, which is a reality for creatives.
It is.
And they have to work with timelines, and that's their job. Some people love it. Some people get intimidated by it, and they don't like to work in those restraints. But you have that creativity grounded within you. You notice that account would be a good track because you are also organized. You're interested in communication, and you saw yourself a future in it. So what do you do? Are there internships? Are you involved in clubs? Because it's not enough. Maybe it is. I don't know. But my view is, like, it's not enough just to take the classes for most advertising majors and then graduate. Unfortunately, that's the job market now. It's tough right now. So how was it when you graduated? Were you involved? What did you do? What were those steps? What was your break-in story from here?
Yeah, no, you absolutely hit it on the nose. Advertising has been and will continue to be such a competitive industry, and you really have to take it upon yourself to do the most. If I'm putting it
you have to.
Gen Z terms, like, you have to be doing the most. Get involved in clubs. I was on ad club by my senior year. I ended up being on the ad club board. I really wanted to be involved, so was in ad club, had speakers speaking to us, got on the board. I just started doing internships. I went from working a customer service manager job just from my day to day to realizing, I need to kind of step out of my comfort zone, get away from that job, and look into something else. And so this is kind of like a piece of advice and a learning, is that you really just need to be doing something during college that's related to your major. And there's so much pressure to get an internship at an agency, especially at the University of Minnesota. I'm sure it's the same with many universities across the US when you're trying to get into advertising. There's so much pressure to get a job or even an internship at an agency. But if you can't, which is the reality for a lot of people, because there's only so many internships open, internship applications are so competitive. Honestly, internships are more competitive than getting actual jobs sometimes.
I say this all the time to people. Every time a student calls me up and they're worried about getting internships, I go, sometimes it's even harder, because there's only a select amount of internships every summer. They all open up at the same time, and everybody in the world, and you're competing not just with college students, but you'll get like 30-year-olds that are still applying to internships.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I hear you. And I also say, don't stress about internships. So I want to hear your perspective. Keep going.
Yeah, don't stress about internships, but you should be doing something. So my track was, because it's not that I didn't really have any hobbies. It's just I didn't really have a creative hobby outside of school. So then my next step was to go and get internships at somewhere. So I started looking we had this internship kind of search platform at the University of Minnesota
Handshake?
called Handshake. Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. So for those,
I know a couple schools have had that.
okay, perfect. Handshake, great, amazing resource. Just go onto Handshake and start looking up keywords like marketing, social, advertising, account management, whatever you want to be in, creative, and just apply to any of those jobs. I applied to a random job where I was a digital marketing manager at a small business in Minneapolis. Ended up being there for a year where I could just grab experience.
What year was this?
This was I believe I started the summer,
Going
the
into
spring. Yeah, the spring after my junior year. So I dove into it the spring of my junior year, started that summer, and then stayed on even while I was in school and just did digital marketing. It involved doing social for them because they didn't have any social. Again, a really, really small brand. I did their social for them, which is so unlike me. It's not something I am great at, but I was like, I need to do this. I need to learn how to do this. I'm doing something,
yes,
something involved with communications.
This is exactly aligns with my advice for account managers, right? I usually say for creatives that you need to focus on your portfolio and more so building your book. And sometimes now this is interesting, and let me know what you think about this, because if you're a creative, so copywriter, art director, and you work at this digital marketing shop, you might not get the most creative work. And that could be actually that could be a problem. That could be an obstacle. But for account managers, it's wonderful because you're getting real experience and you're getting that client interaction. You're working with the team here. So I always say, if you're aspiring account, it doesn't really matter like if you get the big agency or not, as long as you're getting those tangible interactions. And that can even be in the form of creating your own consultancy, really.
Absolutely.
That could be like you're going to local clients, or if your ad club has local clients like mine did, or you even just create your own network and do your own consulting. And as long as you're interacting, you have those stories to tell for account specifically and strategy, perhaps it's golden.
It's all about selling yourself. It's about communicating your value no matter what you do. One of the most important things that people were telling me, it's like, go into customer service, because account at its base level is customer service. It's client service.
What was your customer service job?
I worked at Cub Foods. It's a local
Cub Foods.
It's a local grocery store here in the Midwest. I think we're most.
I used to have some. We used to have some in the Chicagoland area. I think
absolutely. Okay, yeah. They expanded a bit, but
I haven't heard about that brand in a while. But hey, that's the thing. I worked at Nordstrom, and I did like they have really good customer service there. And
you're learning to talk to people. You're learning to communicate. You're learning to please people and how to just work with people and work with difficult people. And sometimes some of the most difficult people you will ever work with are at your base level customer service jobs. And nothing prepared me more for account than that.
Yeah, honestly, that's not a bad idea. Like even for the younger audiences out there or younger listeners that maybe you don't get an internship because you're a freshman and you're going into your sophomore year this summer, definitely look into like a fun, like I always recommend Nordstrom or any other like high level.
Something that we learned in advertising, back in my advertising classes, Nordstrom is known for its customer service. They are built on customer service. So
I'll tell you what, I think it's
Nordstrom.
I don't know if it's still I've seen it go down. My mom worked there for 27 years. And like I went in recently, the one in Chicago, and anyways, I had a bad experience. But it was the one
brand was built on customer.
But you're right. But any sort of customer, you're facing people and you can spin the narrative, right? Like if it's like your point of sale at a pizza place, like you could spin that, like you interact with customers every day. But
no, that's exactly it. So doing something. And it wasn't realistic for me to get a job in communications or advertising early on because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I didn't get my first internship until my junior year, and that's okay. You can still be successful.
Listen, that's great. Like just to have an internship nowadays, it's so hard to get it. And you got it at the right time. Like junior year is usually.
It's a good time to get it.
I also noticed though, within the bigger agencies that a lot of the times now that they're only looking for seniors that are just graduated for their internship.
Yes. And that's another big thing is why I say just go out and do something. And per what you said a little bit earlier, I'm speaking from an account side of things, so I can't really speak to creative. It's a whole different process of diving into advertising. Accounts a little bit different, but just do something, because again, they're not really looking for juniors as much for these internships, because sometimes they want hireable people, and you're not hireable for a 24/7 job right after or right during your junior year.
And I want to get back to your story. So you did this your junior year summer, it bled into your senior year a little bit, and that's
skipped. Yeah, I kind of skipped a little bit of a chapter there, because I looked earlier that year too. So I started by looking for jobs at the University of Minnesota, like university hireable jobs, because I had this thing called work study. So they're like, oh, use your work study. It's the best thing ever. It's like non-taxable income, I think, is what work study is. So I was like, oh, okay. So I looked up the word communications in our University of Minnesota, like job search, and I found a communications job for the School of Public Health. Ended up being one of my best options I could have. It ended up being one of the best things I could have done, because the University of Minnesota School of Public Health is one of the top 10 School of Public Health or
golden
schools in the
Golden Gophers, right?
So it was random. I was like, oh, do I really want this? I'm like, School of Public Health. I'm like, oh, I'll go for it. It's communications. It sounds great. I'm working with some design. I'm communicating. I'm like, I just need to do something. There was a position open, so I was like, I'm going to go for it. So I ended up working there for 1.5 years. So I got that one in January of my junior year. I worked during the year, because I was like, I had my work study, and they were doing like part-time, so 15 hours a week, which is super.
So you stayed busy. You stayed busy.
Super busy.
So you're gathering tangible experience all this time, building your resume up, talking points about why you would be a good account manager. Did you know you want to be account manager at this point, like all of junior year? Like, did you have that narrowed down yet?
End of my junior year, actually, now that I think about it, it was the early fall of my senior year. I had someone who would later become my mentor, who came in to speak to one of our classes about account management. It was a creative director and an account director, and they came in and they were just talking about both sides. And at one point, she was talking about account management. She's like, it's not really that glamorous, but she's like, if you're good at it, you're really good at it. She's like talking about all the key things you need for it. And then at one point, this is the dumbest thing, but she goes, I guess if you're a Gemini, you'd be really good at it. Cause they're like stereotypically known to, be able to adapt to different personalities. And me being who I am, having a June birthday, I was like, oh, I'm a Gemini. I'm like, I can talk to different people. I can
adapt. What day in June? It's coming up.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. And so after that, I was just, something clicked inside me, and I really honed in on it. I'm like, account management sounds like something I would be good at. It's definitely, again, it's not the most glamorous position out there, but it's really taking the skills that I'm good at and taking things that I'm good at and applying them. And I think that's really important too. It may not be the thing I'm the most passionate about in the world, but I know I'm good at it, and it's in an industry I'm passionate about. And I think that's what's important too.
Absolutely. Okay. So junior year, you're doing an internship for the School of Public Health.
Yep.
And then you get this job, this marketing job
in the summer. Cause I was like, I'm not going to be working 50 hours a week this summer. I need something to do. Right. I need to use up the most of my time and
make some money. Why not?
Absolutely. So 2 jobs it was.
You did 2. They were at the same time, 2 jobs?
Yep, 2 jobs at the same time. So I start my School of Public Health job in January. I do that job until I graduate. And then so I'd say May of that same year, I pick up the second job, and I ended up doing both of them until I graduated. So I was in school that fall and that spring till my graduation, and I was doing both my communications job and my digital marketing job.
Was the one for the school is 15 hours a week?
Yep. And the other one was about 15. So it was about 30 hours a week. And I got to manage it. That was the good thing about it, was doing work study and doing these internships and doing these smaller jobs. There's almost an advantage of not being at an agency where they require so much out of you, because you can be flexible and you can work with them on your hours and tell them really realistically what works for you, because they need your help at some of these smaller places. And so you can work with them on that, which is really great.
Did you have a social life?
I did. I did. I did have a social. I'm very good at managing my time, which is probably why I'm an account
There you
manager.
go.
But yeah, I did. So I would have my classes because if you have a normal workload, you are not in classes all day. So I had a heavy workload on Mondays and Wednesdays. That's when I had the most classes. I jam pack it on
Yeah.
Monday and Wednesday. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, I had no Friday classes. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would have a really early class. So then at lunchtime on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I could go into my communications job at the School of Public Health, go to the office. I could do my job, do it for 4 or 5 hours for Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I would kind of just grind out my digital marketing job. I'd make my posts for the month. I would answer any emails. I would write the monthly newsletter, just kind of get it all done. And it doesn't take that long. If you just sit and you you do your thing, you're totally fine.
Me.
You go out at night,
it sounds tough to me. I don't know. You must have a really good work ethic. So I applaud you. And, it makes sense that when you're graduating, or we'll let you finish the story here, that Fallon would want to hire you. So how did you get the job at Fallon?
Oh, sad story. It's a terrible story. No, I'm kidding. It's a great story. So something to get to this story, I need to hit on a key point here, that the University of Minnesota does something called the mentorship program. And you can do it either your junior or your senior year. You can't do it before that. And you can only do it for 1 year. So you can decide to do it your junior year, or you can decide to do it your senior year. I think I found out about it my junior year, so I ended up doing it my senior year. And I was super specific in my application for my mentor. I knew what I wanted at this point. So I think I did it this summer before I was kind of honing in on account management, but it wasn't until that fall that I really knew what I wanted to do. But in my internship application, not my internship application, in my mentorship application, I was super specific. I said account or strategy, because those are the two things I was deciding between. I'm like, I want to be an account person or I want to be a strategy person. Wasn't too sure yet. And then in everything, I swear I wrote the word Fallon or Carmichael Lynch. I was like, I need to put this word in here so much. And so I put Fallon this, like, I'm so interested in this. Like, I'm interested in this person from Fallon that had come and spoken. He was a strategist at Fallon at the time. So I put his name down because they're like, who's someone that you look up to in the advertising agency, or who's someone you know?
So they'll pair you up with a mentor? What?
Yes. So they pair you up with a mentor for a year. You meet with them.
A year?
Yep. You meet with them on your own cadence. Or I guess a school year. So it would be the fall and the spring semester.
For sure. That's nice.
You meet with them on your own cadence once you get paired up with them. And I got paired up with a group account director at Fallon. And
there you go. Ask and you shall receive, right?
Exactly. I was super specific. And so we just made a monthly cadence. We met once a month. We met once a month. And I just asked her all the questions. I was like, what's a day in the life? What makes a good account person? I just picked her brain. And then sometimes we would just talk. We would just talk about what she's working on, and all that stuff. And then I used her for traditional things where I was like, can you please review my resume? Can you review my cover letter? Can you review all of that? So spring comes around, me and my mentor have a really great relationship. She sees potential in me. We've just been working together for quite some time, getting to know each other, and the internship applications come out. So you get to kind of that spring time where every internship is open. So you are just doing everything you can to fill out all the internship applications, which are notoriously hard because you're writing essays and you're making videos. I think one of the agencies here in Minneapolis even did like an AI robot that you had to talk to sign up for this. So you're just busy doing that. And of course, what do I want? I want Fallon. So I apply, I get interviews at a couple different places, but I had my sights set on Fallon. So, I'm interviewing at other places and I interview at Fallon. I'm a couple interviews in, and then I just don't end up hearing back. And there wasn't a sure thing that I was going to get my internship there. Susie, my mentor, wasn't super involved in the internship process. So as much as she could give me advice on what to do, she wasn't directly involved in it. So she couldn't.
You interviewed there and you didn't hear back?
Yep. So I interviewed at Fallon and I interviewed at other places. Ended up getting an offer at a different agency here in Minneapolis called Broadhead. And Broadhead had a deadline of letting them know if you were going to take their internship earlier than when I had heard back from
Sure.
Fallon.
Right.
So I was talked to my mentor and she was like, you have a for sure internship opportunity here. She's like, Fallon, like they haven't gotten back to you. She works at Fallon. Hear me out here. So she was like, you just need to
Okay, she
take
gave
this
you the
Broadhead. She's like, this is a for sure thing. Take it. If something comes up, we can figure it out then, but take this one. So
He said what? Take the Broadhead. Is that the name of the agency?
yeah, take the Broadhead
The full
internship.
time?
She's like,
Oh,
they're
oh, it's
offering
internship.
you one. They're offering you the internship for the summer. She's like, just take it. It's a for sure thing. And if Fallon ends up offering you something, we can talk then. And so I think what ended up, I didn't hear back from Fallon. I interviewed there. My interview went really well. I really vibed with the interviewer. We got along really well. And I just didn't end up hearing back from them. I think it ended up being a thing. I still don't know to this day. I think it ended up being a thing where they had to go with a special program or a brand lab to hire interns that year or something. So I just didn't end up hearing back. So I was a little I wouldn't say anti-Fallon. Had a little bit of
You were hurt.
yeah, I was hurt.
Of course.
Exactly. So I was a little bit like, oh, Fallon, whatever. I don't need it. So I was all focused on Broadhead all summer. So Broadhead is another creative agency based here in Minneapolis, right across the street from Fallon. I can still see the
Yep.
rooftop to this day. And they focus a lot on ag. So when I got to Broadhead as the account management internship, I worked on this brand called Beringer Ingelheim. I believe it's a German brand for antibiotics and all that stuff for livestock. So I worked on the cattle,
Nice.
at Broadhead all summer.
But you didn't tell Fallon to F off or anything like that, right?
No, that's a huge thing. No burning bridges. That's what I
Yes.
you never burn a bridge. I was
Yes.
kind of like, oh, whatever. And me and Susie kept in touch. It was nothing, or me and my mentor. I'll just call her my mentor because I didn't call her by name in previous.
Sure.
My mentor kept in touch most of the summer, but I didn't know. Yeah, no woes with her.
Yeah.
No
Well, it makes sense, right? So you finish up that internship at Broadhead. You learned a lot.
So I learned a lot.
You learn like what clients you might not necessarily want to work on forever, but it's good to know that you got those relevant experience again. It just is building up to your narrative here and your story. So you finish up that internship and then you're graduated this time?
Yep. So I graduated in spring of 2021. Summer of 2021, I have my internship at Broadhead.
And are you thinking like, am I going to have to get a job here? Is this like the next step? And you're kind of preparing yourself like, okay, I got to do well in this internship to get a job. And then maybe down the line, I could transfer to Fallon or another agency later down. You might have convinced yourself you like Broadhead too, like perhaps.
You hit it right on the nose. I was fully prepared to work at Broadhead moving forward. I'd built a really great relationship with everyone that I worked with my internship class. My managers were wonderful. Broadhead's a really great agency. They're like family there. Everyone's really nice. So I get to the end of my internship, obviously did a good job. So they offer me a full-time position at the end of the summer. And right as they're writing up, like the week they're writing up the contract, the week I'm getting an offer, I get a text from my mentor over at Fallon. And she's like, hey, Fallon just won this account called Entenmann's. Like, are you familiar?
Right.
And I'm like, yes, like I love Entenmann's. What's up? And she's like, well, I would love to get you over to Fallon. She's like, I don't know what your situation is at Broadhead, but she's like, there's an account manager position open. I think you're perfect for it. I would love to recommend you. And I was like, yes, absolutely. So I go over to Fallon. I interview for the position. It was 4 or 5 interviews. It was a pretty like strenuous interview process, even with a recommendation.
Sure.
So 4 or 5 interviews and I get the offer at Fallon and it was just wonderful. I was like, yes, this is what I want. But I had built such a strong connection at Broadhead that I was almost scared to jump over to Fallon. Like you said, I'd convinced myself that I wanted Broadhead. I was like, oh, I'm so comfortable here. And it was really all about comfort zones. I was scared to get out of my comfort zone, even though Fallon was the one thing I wanted all throughout college. And looking back, it was crazy, but I knew at that time, like my emotions were valid, that I was scared to get out of my comfort zone and
So you had
scared.
2 offers?
I had 2 offers. So 2 full-time offers.
So you were interviewing while you had this offer sitting at Broadhead, and that was 4 or 5 interviews. How long did you have to like string along Broadhead?
I believe I strung along Broadhead only for a week because my 4 or
Oh,
5 interviews
so you
were
just asked
within
for
2 days.
oh, so you just asked for like, I need a week
Yep,
to
I
look
need
this
a week
over.
to decide, and I was super transparent with them. I know some people tell you not to be transparent. I would ask someone, I asked for advice from my mentor, and she was like, you can be transparent with them. And I told them I was interviewing and I had another offer, and I was super transparent with them. And so because I was scared to get out of my comfort zone, I actually went back to Broadhead and gave them, the first right of refusal. Because at Broadhead, they were offering me an account coordinator position, which is actually below an account manager. So you do more of basic things like opening jobs and basic management. So it wasn't going to be super challenging. And I wanted something more challenging. And I thought that I could do more. And I valued my experience a little bit more than that. So I went back to Broadhead and I was like, hi, Fallon's offering me an account manager position for this much. They're paying me more. And they're offering me the account manager title. I'm like, would you guys be willing to match that and offer me that? And they said no. So
Yeah.
I was like, all right,
Yeah.
fair enough. So I went back to Fallon, and because I was on edge at this time, about whether to go back and decide, my mentor was actually like, okay, well, let's make the deal sweeter. Go back to Fallon, tell them what Broadhead's offering you, because I think they had a better 401k situation in their offer, and they are an independent owned agency. So you can own, I'm not super familiar, you can like own stock, or you can own part of
Sure.
the agency or something like
Stock
that.
sharing, yeah.
You can own
Interesting.
part of the agency. So it was a sweet deal. I mean, in long term, I could have done, really well at Broadhead. So she was like, there's a few things at Broadhead that are keeping you there. So she's like, you should go back to Fallon and let them know that, they need to sweeten the deal a little bit. So I actually did go back to Fallon, and I was like, hey, and I wrote this whole thing up. I had notes and notes and notes. I was like, hey, this is exactly what I'm going to say. So I'm like, Fallon, I would love to take your offer, but can you pay me this price? I think they were offering me, do you guys talk about pay trend?
Hey, whatever you want to talk about. This is
Yeah.
your show. This is
I
your
think
episode.
they were offering me 47,000 at the time, and I was like, I want 50 because Broadhead's offering me this, this, and this, and I think this could sweeten the deal. And so they ended up saying yes. It was one of the most nerve-wracking things
Scary
because
stuff.
I was an intern going into a full-time job
Yeah.
at my dream agency, and I was
Well,
like, am I really asking for more money? And
yeah, people don't do that, and you can, because once they give you the offer and you go through those 5 interviews, they've already invested a lot of time in you, and they've spent a lot of their resources, and they chose you. They might have already said no to other people that were in the application process, if they even have other people.
absolutely.
A lot of times, like, they'll just like go that referral first, and then they'll interview you, and they'll just put like, okay, then people don't negotiate.
No,
And
exactly. And I wasn't going to until my mentor told me to. And it
it's
was,
the scariest shit ever.
yeah, it is. And I was so grateful that she told me to, because the HR person, she's a woman, she ended up applauding me right after that. And she was like, I am so proud of you for doing that, because more women need to stand up and advocate for themselves in this industry and in just careers in general. So she really applauded me, and I felt so proud after that. And I went back to my mentor and I was like, thank you so much for pushing me to do that. And I wouldn't have done it if there wasn't a few things at my other agency that was off. Not only first of all, you have to probably have another job offer to kind of help leverage.
Or do you?
Or do you? Maybe not.
Right. Maybe you just you can say you have another job offer. I mean, you have to be careful. Or you could just say, like, what I like to do is I like to give my range. Given my experience and what I've done, and given my experience and what I've done in my situation here, I expected to be paid within X and X dollars.
Yeah.
And you give a range. What I do is I give a range super freaking high, like way higher than it should be. And then they'll negotiate down from there.
And that's so great of you. And I think more women in the industry need to be empowered to do that, because I think it's intimidating for a lot of women. And I don't want to, cast stereotypes over a lot of women, but it can be hard. I feel like men are a little bit more empowered to ask for.
Yeah.
higher salaries.
For
So
sure. It's scary. It was scary for me, but I can't even imagine, like, I don't know, like I could see that being very difficult as well.
It's something you need to give yourself the chance to do it, and you
Yeah.
should do it. And if you're a little bit scared, what helped support me was bringing in those talking points and bringing those points
Yeah.
of
Doing
leverage,
research.
of why I should sweeten the deal.
And then you can also do like go on Glassdoor and figure out what the other agencies are paying the same
And
level.
compare and be like, this is the
Yeah.
market price. This is what I want.
I would like for you, if you're interested, to write a blog about like this on our site.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that later. And like more going into more negotiation, because I think there's a lot to unfold here. Or even, we can do another bonus episode or something like that. But I want to like encapsulate now, because we're running low on time here, and go over the high points of what stuck out to me. Okay. First and foremost, this mentorship program that you have in Minnesota is beautiful, right?
It's
that whether or not your school has this, you should create your own in your head, right? That's a lesson that I learned from you. Create your own mentorship program. Pick 2 to 3 people. Don't get too many people, because it's hard to keep up with, and really lock in and reach out to them, and then follow up with them once a month. That could be a lot. I would say quarterly. So every
build
3
a
months.
cadence that they're comfortable with. Like, be honest.
And meet up with them if you can in person. Be straightforward. I want to just stay in touch with you, because the earlier you start, junior, senior year, the better. Because then you develop a relationship. And it's not like one of those things where, hey, Gino, I just graduated from University of Minnesota. Can I get a job now? I go, I don't like that. It makes and that happens all the time. Yeah. And I did it, and you will do it. If you're listening, you're going to do it. It's just what happens when when you graduate. You need to find a job, and they get that. But if you can start talking with Gino or Victoria your junior year,
build a relationship.
Show me the work you've done. Ask me questions. Come visit Havas. Come visit Fallon, and show up, and then stay in touch. Maybe offer me some help with the podcast. Maybe if you have a side, like, hey, I wrote this blog for you, like that. To me,
put some effort into it.
Something like that. You did that very well. And you whether or not you're offering value is another conversation, but you stuck with your mentor for a long time. Then you got that internship. You didn't burn any bridges at Fallon. I might have done that. I get emotional. I get hot-headed. That's just the way I am. So, I might have blogged about it. I would have maybe podcast ranted, being upset. And you didn't do that. And that was great. You didn't burn any bridges. And you also got very comfortable, and you learned a lot at Broadhead, and you were ready to go. And that maybe that would probably help you leverage that conversation when you got the role.
And I would say at the end of the day, I knew that I was doing something better for myself, and I knew that I was helping myself move forward in my career. So even if it wasn't my dream position or it wasn't my end goal, I knew I would get there, and this was just a stepping stone to get there.
Wonderful. And what else? I think like biggest piece of advice from your story, anything else that really stands top of mind, if you could tell yourself looking back. Is my connection okay?
I think it broke up there for a second. So
okay.
I'll
redo it. If you can, last piece of advice, if you could summarize anything or tell yourself to younger Victoria, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self breaking into advertising?
Definitely be confident. You need to be confident in yourself. You need to go out and do something and believe in yourself and work towards it, and you will get there eventually. You may not always be a linear path to exactly what you want to do. So trust and be confident in your skills, and work hard and keep shooting for that goal, because you will get there. My story is a perfect example of that.
And you did a great job telling that story. How can people reach out to you if they have any other questions? I'm sure they will.
Absolutely. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Victoria Clouse on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive on there. My LinkedIn has my email in my bio. It's Victoria R, my middle initial, Clouse @gmail.com. So that is in my LinkedIn as well. And I am responsive on both of those things. So I'd love to talk to anyone and give any advice and have any follow-up conversations on Fallon or account management in general.
Great work. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do it without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest. Thank you so